Okay, turning to a different topic now, and the impact of technology on our democracies. Initially seen as a powerful way of connecting politicians to the people, it was, for example, credited with the first successful run of Barack Obama for president. But it has since shown a darker side, used by authoritarian countries to hack and track any critic. But not just by them. Technology is being used by many, perhaps all democracies, by police services in particular to track crime. Run by large corporations, these technologies and those who run them are not answerable to the people. The result is that more and more power is now in private hands, and it's not just our elections but our daily lives that are paying the price. To tell us more, we can speak to former politician turned AI policy analyst Marietje Schaake. Marietje Schaake, thanks for your time and joining us on France 24. Now, you have a new book out. It's called The Tech Coup. Is that what it is? Is technology literally stealing power from under us?
Well, indeed, power is leaking away from our democratically elected and accountable politicians and institutions to these private companies. And we see it everywhere. A recent example in Romania, for example, where a candidate that had no public profile through newspapers or television appearances, only through the use of TikTok and with strong accusations of using manipulative tactics, botnets, fake accounts, disinformation to get him elected, just shows how the algorithms of social media companies have an impact on our information diet and therefore on our democracies. But think also about the fact that companies are now putting satellites into space, allowing or disallowing internet connectivity for people, including in the battlefields in Ukraine. These are incredibly powerful positions of companies that are not accountable enough to the people.
Let's name names. I mean, I'm thinking of Elon Musk and his Starlink satellite. And Elon Musk, as we know now, has quite a close role to the incoming US government. Apart from controlling the internet, how much of an influence are you imagining blackouts of internet over certain areas, or what influence might these satellites have on regular countries?
Well, if you look at the decisions that Elon Musk has taken before, he basically is in a position to say we are or we are not going to grant this connectivity to people. And because he has such a strong geopolitical agenda, that basically means he can make key decisions that used to be the exclusive domain of states. And you're right that he is now incredibly close to the president-elect, Donald Trump, and I've never seen the kind of synergy between corporate interests of Elon Musk and the tech sector and the political leadership of the United States, the most powerful hub when it comes to technology. So the tech coup is really unfolding before our eyes, where we have seen Vice President-elect J.D. Vance threatening the EU with a pullout of the United States out of NATO if EU lawmakers were to regulate Elon Musk's platforms or companies any further. This is the kind of connection and influencing of the political agendas by companies. And the case of Elon Musk makes this phenomenon very visible. A lot of times we see this power grab, erosion of democratic power to be a much more subtle and invisible process.
When you look, and I'd like to look at that invisible process a little bit later, but when you look at the level it has reached, I mean, the ultimate question is what can be done about it now?
Well, it's incredibly important that democratic leaders and governments see the reclaiming of the primacy of governance as a key goal in and of itself, and that informs both short-term and long-term decisions. So in the EU, we are expecting to see a lot of investments, for example. The Draghi report, a key need to make sure that our economies are innovative enough, but to make those investments in ways that they strengthen public digital infrastructure, public values, more transparency, more security, more accountability would be really important, just as one example.
I don't want to sound defeatist, but it does all come down to money. And when you have companies like Apple that, on the market are worth more than the stock exchanges of Germany and Australia, as you point out in your book, together, I mean, to what level do you think governments are going to be able to stand up to that amount of wealth and power?
Well, it's incredibly important to see this problem through the lens of power and for democratic governments to use the variety of tools that they have to change this status quo. Regulation being one of them, public procurement being another. Governments are important clients of tech companies too and can use that as leverage for better outcomes. And of course, investment. So if I look at the past 4 or 5 years in EU policy making, there has been a lot of regulation. I don't expect that that tempo will be repeated in the next 5 years. So we must look at powerful enforcement using the purchasing power of governments for changes and a less strong grip by the big tech companies, and of course these investments to create different markets, different incentives for innovation in Europe, but with a stronger emphasis on making sure that democratic leaders and institutions stay in charge.
Yeah, because ultimately the alternative is that we have businessmen at the top that we don't vote in or don't vote out and have little control over. I'm getting the idea of how this technology can influence the way people might vote or the disinformation they might have towards voting. But there's a myriad of other ways that it's impacting our daily lives.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of hype now around artificial intelligence. And if we take one application, facial recognition systems, for example, we see that these tend to discriminate. A lot of AI applications discriminate. And that is, of course, illegal. But companies are still putting out these models, putting out generative AI models onto the market without a lot of testing or safeguards in the public interest. So, really, we are living through a sort of experiment where other kinds of products, think about medicines that are new, have been tested, have been controlled, can only be put out into the public to patients after these precautionary steps. And so we need to make sure that we are putting up the right procedures, regulations, oversight mechanisms to make sure that we are not just allowing the release of either discriminatory or dangerous AI applications, even though that is what's happening now.
Because there's so much, people can be spied on, their computers can be hacked without ever clicking on a dangerous link or even knowing that our devices are being spied on, really. What can the individual do, before we leave you briefly, Marietje Schaake?
Individual internet users can really choose the best privacy protecting apps. So, for example, the Signal app, when it comes to messaging, they can decline cookies to trace them on the internet. But most of all, they should really think twice about being online so much. It's highly addictive. There are fraudsters and cyber criminals active there. So the fact that we are all addicted to our devices is one problem that hopefully people will think critically about for their children, but also for themselves.
Indeed, the addiction, definitely another major topic. Marietje Schaake, we'll have to leave it there, but thanks so much for joining us here on France 24 and giving us a glimpse of the price we're paying for our technology.